Well, hey, what's going on? Nick Kirby here. Welcome to Chatterbox Reds, proudly sponsored by DSC Commodities. I'm joined today by my pal, Bryce Spalding. I'm going to talk about a couple things. Reds added 2 new players to the 40-man roster. I know I'm really excited about both of these players. We'll talk about some of the players the Reds chose not to add. Before we get to Bryce and all of that, as always, Chatterbox Reds is proudly sponsored by Deep South Commodities. DSC is a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks, as always, to our friends at DSC. All right, Bryce, my guy, it's November 19th, November 20th, probably as people are listening to this. It's been a wild offseason so far for the Reds. We're only a couple weeks past the World Series, and it feels like almost a full offseason almost with the Franco news, just Reds rumors already coming, TV stuff. It's been a wild couple weeks here to start the offseason.
It has, yeah. And obviously being able to start the offseason hiring one of the best managers ever is it already kind of gives you the warm and fuzzies inside. So super excited for Terry. Obviously, I think that's one of the biggest gets of the offseason. I think it really sets the tone for what the Reds want to do in 2025 moving forward. I think the TV deal is a really good thing for the fans. We'll see how it affects the payroll. It doesn't seem like it's going to, which is great. So yeah, really exciting times. Obviously, the news today. I don't think it should be unnoticed that the $21 million qualifying offer is not nothing. So they definitely had confidence that Nick Martinez was going to accept that, and he did obviously today. So super exciting time here.
Bryce, did you watch that Netflix documentary, the comeback?
I did. It's incredible.
Yeah, I finished that last night with the wife, and awesome documentary. Just can't plug that enough. I was someone who always loved, was fascinated by the Red Sox comeback, loved the 30 for 30, watched it legitimately probably 20 or 30 times. And this felt new. Like, it was really cool the way they did it. There was so much I didn't know. I was, in high school when it happened. Really awesome documentary, but you're just watching this, you're like, that's the freaking Reds manager, man. That's the freaking Reds manager. Like, it's just so surreal that Terry Francona is the Reds manager. And that was like the biggest takeaway from watching. It's like, I can't believe this guy's managing our baseball club.
Yeah, I don't even think it's really set in. I don't think it'll set in until it's like spring training, opening day. It's like the new manager of the Cincinnati Reds, Terry Francona. And you're like, wow. Like 2-time World Series champion, Terry Francona. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty awesome. So be sure to check that out. The comeback that's on Netflix. Could not recommend that anymore. It is, if you're a baseball fan, it's a must watch. All right. Well, there was some exciting news today for the Reds. Today was the as we record this on Tuesday. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, it was yesterday. Was the deadline to add players to the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. The Rule 5 draft will be, I think, December 11th at the winter meetings. So the Reds had to make some tough decisions, and the Reds added Luis Mey and Tyler Callihan. We'll get to Callihan in a second, but probably has a little bit more of a conversation because he was definitely a lot more up in the air. Luis Mey felt like the no-brainer move. Luis Mey is a relief pitcher. The Reds, they signed him in July 2018 out of the Dominican Republic. Was cracked the Reds prospect list at times, was not on the prospect list this year unless he kind of came in at the end. Hasn't been on prospect lists in a little bit of a while. If you had asked Bryce and me, I know me and Clay talked last week, if you'd asked us several months ago, would maybe protect it, would have been like, no, I don't think so. This is a guy that walked the world, but it seemed like he kind of figured it out, got promoted to Chattanooga, Double-A, a little bit surprising, and then went to the Arizona Fall League. And what did he do in the Arizona Fall League? He was the reliever, the AFL Reliever of the Year was the official title. The scouting report says has almost certainly earned a 40-man roster spot based on his AFL performance. He's opened a lot of eyes by lighting up the radar gun with a sinking fastball that routinely reaches triple digits and misses bats with a cutter-like slider. So Luis Mey, no-brainer add. Will he be able to throw strikes? That's the big question. But, when you're watching the postseason, Bryce, and you see teams like the Cleveland Guardians that just throw reliever after reliever after reliever, This guy, a guy like Zach Maxwell, these are guys that have a chance to be those kind of relievers for the Reds.
Yeah, and it's an upside play, obviously. You're not adding Luis Mey to be a foregone conclusion of being a big league. You're adding him to be the potential of being a lockdown reliever. So it's a situation where if he's not added, he's more than likely picked in the Rule 5 draft, and somebody's going to stash him on their roster for a full year, and you're going to lose him. So he may not have been added if that wasn't the case, if you could just keep him if you don't add him. But in that case that somebody could pick him up, it was a no-brainer. But yeah, he pitched great in the AFL. I think that's the biggest thing. Whenever you see him and you hear about him, you think he would strike out more people. But as you mentioned there, it's more of like a sinker. You think of like a Emmanuel Clase, who I'm not saying he's Emmanuel Clase by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not going to be a big strikeout reliever. Like he's going to get ground balls. He gets weak contact. He overwhelms people with his stuff, and it's a matter of if he can be in the strike zone more often, because nobody squares him up. I think his batting average against this year was in like the low 200s. So like whenever he's in the zone, nobody really is able to square him up, which I think is a really intriguing thing, because if it's 1 or 2 tweaks away from being a really, really quality reliever. And I think you can already see that sometimes.
Yeah, really could not have been more polar opposites in terms of him and Tyler Callihan as why the Reds kept each of the two players. Luis Mey, certainly, if he goes to spring training and throws strikes and looks great, I wouldn't be shocked he's on the opening day roster. But at the same breath, if Luis Mey doesn't throw strikes, he may not make the roster all year in 2025, and that really wouldn't shock me either. But as you mentioned, someone would have picked him up in the Rule 5 draft. You're not going to let a guy that has this kind of potential, that dominated the Arizona Fall League the way that he did, you're not going to just throw him in your bullpen. There's the Chicago White Sox are a team. There's teams that can stash a player like that, and if he figures it out, be like, hey, man, I can flip this reliever for something really big back. So Reds had to protect him. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see Luis Mey, but it also, if Luis Mey will have every opportunity to get on the Reds roster as soon as he pretty much wants to and proves that he's able to.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other player added, Tyler Callihan. If you watch Chatterbox Reds, you heard me rave about Tyler Callihan all second half of the season, because this guy absolutely raked. He was hurt early in the year. He came back about May 7th and was one of the best hitters in all of minor league baseball from the beginning of May through the end of the year. Had another injury too at some point. Was out for, I think, a couple weeks, came back, just kept hitting the ground running, went to the Arizona Fall League, played well there, showed a little bit of pop, showed some of his stolen base ability. A player that was pretty high. I think he was a top 15 prospect in 2020. Another guy that kind of fell off the list. But in 2024, he absolutely proved himself. And Bryce, for me, this is exciting, because the fact that the Reds added Tyler Callihan makes me believe they have that same kind of excitement. They have that same kind of hope in Tyler Callihan that I feel just as a fan watching him, because he's the kind of player that you probably feel like maybe you could have snuck through, that wouldn't have maybe got either drafted the Rule 5 or, as I know when I talked with Jack McMullen of Just Baseball, said Callie kind of feels the kind of guy that'll get selected in the Rule 5, but probably gets returned just can't make a roster spot. But the Reds aren't risking that. And the fact that the Reds are risking that tells me we should be very excited about Tyler Callihan. And it also tells me there's a real chance Tyler Callahan's in the big leagues in 2025.
Yeah, and I think it all goes back to his kind of amateur days. You look at Callihan through high school, and he was 1A, 1B, 1C with like Bobby Witt Jr. and those guys. He played on he hit third on that Team USA team. You look at that team, it's like all MLB All-Stars just littered through it. He was the best hitter on the team. Like the guy, he's just got a knack for it. He can hit. You watch him hit, and you're like, man, this feels polished. Every at bat feels like a good at bat. And as you mentioned, he kind of earned himself. I don't think start of 2024, there's no way they thought they were going to have to protect Callihan. just due to the fact that he was hurt and he was kind of struggling. He could never really get his footing whenever he was playing. And then it just like everything clicked. Like towards the end of last year in Chattanooga, he got promoted kind of randomly. He was kind of struggling in Dayton. He got promoted to Chattanooga and absolutely tore it up towards the end of the year. And then you were like, okay, maybe he can kind of build on that momentum. Maybe he figured something out, and he really did. And like you mentioned, he has got some sneaky tools as well. He stole 22 bags. He's got good pop. I think he was up to like 109, 110 exit velos for a guy his size. I think he's 5'10", 5'11", like 210. He can play all over the field. So he's like he feels like it's a minimal upgrade, but it's an upgrade of like the Jacob Hurtubys, like the end of your roster that you want to just upgrade marginally every year. And then he's got the 3 options, obviously adding him to the 40-man. So he'll probably start the year in AAA, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's one of the first guys called up if an injury happens or guys are struggling or whatever that may be, because I know he's going to go down there and hit. So I'm really excited for him, really happy for him. He's a guy I followed really closely for a long time. As you mentioned, he was a really coveted prospect. They gave him a lot of money in the 3rd round in 2019. And he feels like he's really kind of hitting his stride here, and I hope he continues that on here.
Yeah, it mentioned since May 7th. So this was his final 50 games. There was an injury in there. 335, 426 on base percentage, 941 OPS. It's a 175 WRC plus. And that's a league, the Southern League. You put up a 941 OPS in the Southern League, you're doing something. It's one of the toughest leagues to hit in. Mm-hmm. It usually favors the pitcher. So yeah, I'm really excited. He kind of reminds me, I don't know if you get this comp. I kind of feel like he reminds me a little bit of like an Adam Frazier type player. Just a solid player. I don't think he's going to turn into a superstar. I would like, if he develops a little bit more pop as a left-handed bat at Great America Ballpark, you could really sneak up and run up some home runs. I don't think he's like that superstar, but I also don't think his floor is all that low. I feel like he's going to hit at least like, close to league average in the big leagues when he gets to that point.
Yeah, and I like the Frazier comp. I kind of threw out TJ Friedel as well, where it's like he can grow into like, nobody in their right mind ever thought TJ Friedel would hit 20 home runs in the big leagues, and he did. So like it's a matter of like getting the opportunity and doing it, because TJ was the same way. He was always labeled as a 4th or 5th outfielder, was never going to hit enough or be strong enough, or all these different things that kind of came about. And I think Callihan may even have a little bit better hit tool than Friedel has. So it's a really interesting dynamic, because that type of profile can really sneak up on you. And it doesn't really the guy that makes a lot of contact and maybe he's kind of growing into some things or hasn't really been healthy enough, like he can sneak up on you and be a good big leaguer in no time. So already 24, I'm expecting some noise from Callihan next year for sure.
Yeah, also walked in over 12% of his plate appearances at Double-A. For comparison, the only player in the Reds that was above 11 was Jonathan India. Honestly, the more I think about it, he almost has a little bit of Jonathan India type comps. I mean, India's a right-handed batter, Callahan's a left-handed batter, but that same, like, India hit 15 home runs, good on base percentage, good walk rate. I think Callahan's probably profiles as a guy that hopefully profiles a guy that's going to be a better player defensively than India, and probably has a little bit more versatility. Not a knock on India. India never really was asked of what Callihan, but moving him to left field at times, giving him that option of playing second base, playing left field, has played third base. That gives the Reds a lot of options with him and really excites me. Yeah,
definitely. I'm very excited for him.
All right, so let's talk about the players that were not added, Bryce, because there were some surprises. I was pretty surprised that Jose Acuna was not added. He was probably the biggest surprise of this list. Jose Franco was the guy that was mentioned by Mark Sheldon by name as one of the 4, along with May and Acuna, that could be protected. Outside of that, I wasn't really surprised. Obviously, Nestor Laurent had an incredible year. Yerlin Confidan has the exit velocity pop that blows you away. And then Andrew Moore is the guy that has a lot of potential, but hasn't really got the results. Jose Acuna was the only one that really shocked me today, and it'll be interesting. He's probably the only one that is is at risk of being selected in the Rule 5.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Acuna is a tough case because he really didn't pitch that much this year. He was coming off an injury, and they were really careful with him. He went to Double-A for I think 8 or 9 starts, and then he went to Triple-A for a couple starts, and they were shorter stints. So I don't know if they were just trying to build him up, and they never really got him to the point where he was like full on just starting, going 5-6 innings at start. But yeah, he did kind of struggle in AAA when he got back up. So maybe that kind of shied him away a little bit. He doesn't have great stuff. He does get swing and miss. He doesn't really walk a lot of people. So he's got some intriguing qualities. I would be surprised if somebody took him just because the fact that he would have to pitch out of the bullpen more than likely. And it would have to be like just mop up duties. Like he's not going to get high leverage innings. He's really not going to. He can probably eat 2 or 3 innings at a time in like a loss, but how valuable is that? I know, like you said, we've got the White Sox and the A's out there, so wouldn't be surprised if he's picked, but I also would be kind of surprised if somebody did take him a chance to keep him on a roster for a full year. So it'd be interested to see. But yeah, I think Andrew Moore is a really interesting one. I mean, the strikeout numbers are incredible. I mean, 59 innings. I think he had 93 Ks. Yeah, there you go. So he kind of reminds me of May in a way of he might get picked up just based off of the pure stuff. And somebody's like, man, we can keep this guy and he can throw 1 inning stints at a time. And if he figures out the command a little bit, he could be a guy that can eat some really quality innings for us. So I think he could get picked up. Everybody else, I think, is definitely a no. Ivan Johnson is a really cool story. I think he's going to be a great organizational player for a long time. I hope he gets a shot one day, but the swing and miss concerns are a little much. Jose Franco, Ness Laurent, guys that had good years at a kind of lower levels there. So, yeah, I'm not overly shocked. I think Andrew Moore and Acuna are the only guys to really look out for come December 11th here.
Acuna, maybe on other years, I might not think it really has a chance, but just we've kind of seen the mark of Nick Martinez accepting the getting a qualifying offer, not just accepting it. Nick Pivetta getting a qualifying offer. There's all this buzz about how starting pitching is a hot commodity this offseason. So that's what makes me think Acuna has a chance. I could absolutely see a situation where Acuna gets selected in the Rule 5, goes to a team in camp, and ends up getting returned to the Reds. I think that's a really plausible scenario for Acuna. But we'll wait and see. I do like all these guys on this list, other than poor Austin Hendrick there at the bottom that just the token got put on there because he was a first-round pick. But I do like all these other guys. I think every single one of them has their own sort of potential. But I don't really think I agree. Moore's the only other one. Moore had such a weird season. He was in Chattanooga, got sent down. I'm assuming it was probably more of just an organizational move that was to get innings and stuff. But it's always weird when you see a guy with the potential of Moore getting demoted in the middle of the season. I don't think it was actually a demotion, but it just was a weird situation. And Moore had some crazy runs this year. Someone who follows these, wrote these reports every day. Just look at the numbers. He was a guy that was absolutely dominant for weeks at a time and then absolutely crap the bed for weeks at a time. So he's an interesting guy to watch, a guy that I hope does not get away. He might be the one guy on that entire list that I would be most nervous if he got away.
Yeah, he feels like a guy that if he gets picked up and somebody's able to keep him on a roster for a full year, you're going to look up in like 3 or 4 years and you're like, well, that sucks because he's pitching in big innings and that sort of thing. Because I mean, the stuff is incredible. It's big league stuff already, and there's a reason the Reds targeted him in the Castillo deal, and I think they still think highly of him, even if they didn't protect him here. So, like you said, I'm really hoping they're able to keep him.
We also want to remind you that you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a place to get support for anything related to mental health, whether it's an immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between. It's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay.